Welcome to today's episode of Courageous Leaders Changing the World. Super excited to have our guest today, Corey Boutwell.
Thank you so much for having me, Cody.
So, when it comes to leadership, what's been one of those times in your life where you had to really step into courage when in a leadership capacity?
Oh my goodness, this is a big question. There's been quite a few, so I'll
Yeah.
list off one. My whole journey for leadership has essentially been learning to let go
Yeah.
for me and stop seeking approval of people. Like that's been my whole thing. And it first really come up when we ran like my first retreat. So I co-facilitated it with my head coach, Glenn. It was us and we had two other staff members on there. Like we all facilitated a men's personal development workshop. We predominantly work with anger, right? So for me, when I plan things out and get things sorted, I liked everything organized, like to the T, controlled. Everything has to go by the exact time because the experience that people have to have, they have to have that experience because if they don't have it, then I'm not good enough and I should have done better. So it all boiled down to this one key little moment of starting a fire, right? So we were doing an exercise on the first night and I remember I was like, oh, can you guys please get the fire on? Because we're starting this exercise at 7. I come out, it's like 6:50 and people are still trying to figure out how to get the fire. And I'm like, how hard is it, guys, to start a fire? And they were trying to build it one way and it was taking so long. And I was just like, oh my God, guys, let me do it, right? So I like pushed them out the way because they were building like some hex thing. And they're like, no, Corey, hex thing works. I'm like, nah, do a TP. Come on, guys, you're taking way too long. Built the TP. I just inserted dominance and then like lit it up. And the guys are like, what the hell? And because like I was organizing the event, the guys were obviously like, okay, we'll just let Corey do it. And then after, they were like, Corey, you need to take a breath because you've been coming in here controlling like crazy. And that fire thing, man, like you just didn't have to come in like that and like take over and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah. It was the first moment I went, why did I do that? It doesn't matter if we spent 20 minutes. Like that was the last exercise of the day. It could have gone to whenever, you know what I mean? And we're finishing at 8 o'clock. Like we have the whole night ahead of us. If we need to go an extra 10 minutes or 15 minutes, that's okay. And the fire doesn't have to be perfect. It can take its time. And that's when I first sort of went, oh shit, I'm like a bit of a control freak in regards to this. And I had to like apologize to everyone and like in my team. And that was the courageous part for me because I found it really challenging to admit to everyone like, hey guys, I shouldn't have done that. And I'm sorry for taking over and bossing it all around just to get this fire started. And that was the key for me when it just started. I started thinking about this and it just filtered into everywhere, into my relationship with my mum, relationship with my dad, into other areas of business with my clients and everything. And I didn't even realize for me, because I've done a lot of study on emotional intelligence and I've done a lot of study on other areas. And there's a lot of things that I know and I understand and I try to embody, but it just wasn't encoded into my DNA. So like now after learning that, it's been a crazy couple of months of just letting go. And for me, that's really been the crux of it. So
Yeah, epic. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things with leadership. We think that, the result is the most important thing. And we fall into when you can get the result, it's really, 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 really hard to let other people do it when you can fucking do it. It's like one of my favorite quotes is, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
oh my gosh, that's so true. Yeah, a quote that I've been having on this is I've eaten my own words and I've found the diet nourishing. So I've been like this consistent process of like eating my own words and being like, stop being such a robot, bro.
Yeah, I love that.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's one of those things when we're looking at leading that control that we hold because we know that we can get it, we can smash through it, we can do all of the things to be able to get it. How do you, number one, recognize when you've fallen back into that need for control, and then how do you move past that?
Oh yeah, this is a very easy answer on this one. So when I notice that I'm in a state of control, it's just when I notice that my nervous system's activated. For me, I have this panic or this anxious type of feeling that I used to disassociate to, right? But after having the experience of letting go and being called forward and being called out and having a relationship end because of it, I was like, oh, I really have to look at this. Like I really have to look at this because there's this need that I have. It feels like this need that I just have to fix the thing or I have to do it, right? It goes back to that quote that you just said. And in the moment of recognize it, I go, oh, I'm in a need for control at the moment. Shut up. Literally, I'll just go quiet. I'll just wait. Instead of going in and trying to manipulate things to get it in a way that I would like to most of the time prove to people that I'm one of them so that I can connect with them and that they can connect with me and that they can trust me and that I can help them have an awesome experience. It's how can you just help them to have a great experience regardless of what the goal is. Because what I found, which has been really interesting for me, especially just posting on social media recently, I remember it was only a couple of weeks ago and I was just been really intentionally at the moment, like before I try to post on social media, I'm like, how can I do this for the sake of connection from the heart? Let's take the need to control or approve out or like prove to people like, oh, I can do this, so you should listen to me. Let's take that out and really try to connect. And when I've done that and I have, like I've talked about a story of me being misunderstood or something like that, people just go through my links and buy a ticket to something that we're doing. And I'm like, I didn't even sell to this person. I didn't tell them that we got this thing. I didn't say anything else. They know my stuff because I've been promoting it, but they've been waiting for this moment to feel connected to me, to really trust my leadership. So that is one thing. And then really understanding that the connection piece, we learned at last Bridge and Extreme, for me, it really, the penny did drop of connect first, then lead. And it's interesting, like it's so funny that happened because I did a bunch of workshops around Australia and we ran some little like leadership facilitation exercises, and that was so fun. Like we created so much chaos with people and there was a couple of theories that we learned and it was awesome. But what we like studied at every single one, what was missing in leadership every time was people wanted to connect. And I was like, isn't this fascinating? We're talking to everyone like, look at this. People go and write things on the board or whatever it is. We're like, that's connection, that's connection, that's connection. Then the real time of the exercises that we were running, we noticed and we're like, when did anyone buy into that? When did you think that they were right? When was that leadership that they think did actually work? And they were like, when they connected first. So for me, like seeing that happen and then noticing that like I wasn't doing it in a way that I should have been doing it, like for myself, and having like the wake up moment of the last couple of months of understanding it has just been, it's been pretty transformational and also pretty emotional because I've been like, oh, who have I been being, even though that I've so sure on who I am. And it was like, it was really frustrating, to be honest. Frustrating and a little bit sad, but opening, which was cool.
Yeah. Magical. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the, it's like the ultimate leadership quote, which is like the African proverb. It's like, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And that's been, one of the biggest journeys for me as well. It's just like, there's times where it's just like, just get the fuck out of my way. I'm going to smash through and get it done because we're just going to get there really fast. And then that piece of just like dropping back and going, oh, well, if we're actually going to go the distance with this, then I need to take that time. I need to take that space to actually connect with people on that journey as well, so that we can actually become enrolled in the vision, so that we can actually start to create those shifts through the leadership, rather than it just being about, me getting all of my significance from it, of being the person who gets it done, all that kind of stuff.
Can you relate? Have you been like that before? I'm so happy I'm not the only one. Oh my gosh.
That's my life.
This is my whole life. That is so funny. Well, thank you.
Yes,
thank you. Because that makes me feel so, that regulates my nervous system. I'm like, oh, God damn. Because I got some pretty heart-led people in my team that I have. So they're always just like, bro. And I'm just like, let's tick boxes and go. Like, we'll have fun later. We'll have fun later. And they're like, no, like we don't want to. And I'm like, yeah, well, if this is happening with 3 people here, like it's going to happen with everyone ever. Yeah. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the piece of that is like, people want to be able to feel you. And if they can feel you and they can connect with you, then they start to feel safe. They can actually start to trust you. And until that point, they have that kind of intellectual understanding of like, you're the person that can support you. But until they have that moment where, you're fully authentic in yourself, then they don't have that moment where they actually go from consuming your content to buying the ticket as well. What have you noticed with that?
Could you phrase the question a little bit differently?
Yeah. So the one of the primary things that I've noticed is when we can actually start to create people feeling us and experiencing us, that then creates trust, and then that has them take action. What's been your journey with that?
Okay, yeah, this is really cool. So I would mostly say a lot of it's come from social media, right? And I had a meeting with my team, and this was actually really cool because my whole team was frustrated at the content that I was creating, right? All of them, right? So we had a content coach, we had this thing, and the whole stuff. We were like, let's try some different content.
Yeah.
And we probably stuck to a form of content that we'd been sticking to for too long, when it was very like this, structure, bang, 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 and then finish. And then noticing, like having the moment when I was talking to some of my staff members, like what we sell is actually more of like an emotional product. Like we teach men purpose, fitness, charisma, and online branding. Like that's what we teach at Set the Standard, because we all think that that's the way to raise your value as a man. You raise your value. It's like, it's so much easier to, attract your partner, re-attract your partner, get over, break it up, whatever it is. Like just go beast mode, right? So I was creating all this content. My team were just like, oh, we're just like, I don't want to share it. I'm having trouble editing it. And, I had to go to the team and be like, guys, we're trying at the moment. We're trying different things. And it come down to, it was like, all right, well, let's try some new stuff. Because we did it for like 5-6 weeks, right? Let's try some new stuff. And I talked to my content coach, and he was like, you should definitely be doing the other stuff. Like try everything, right? And I was like, oh, damn, why do I always get stuck in one thing, right? So it's been interesting to look at.
Yeah.
But we tried some new content that was just really authentic, right? And we're like, okay, we've learned the techniques of the content techniques and done so many reps that now even doing something natural, just off the cuff, because I used to do everything off the cuff, and then I went to just scripts.
Yeah.
So now we do like a little bit of both in the middle, and we just changed a couple. And it doesn't, for us, it's like, oh, we don't have to have every piece of content look like this, but let's just try a couple of these. And we tried them, and everyone on the team was like, I felt the fuck out of this. This was the best thing ever. Like, you doing this was amazing. And then DMs just got like flooded in. And it was very interesting to see, because obviously camera doesn't lie. You can tell when someone's authentic on a camera, and you can tell when they're just like coming at you or whatever.
Yeah.
And just that whole experience of the whole team just being like, wow, this was awesome. And I went to like a team meeting, and the whole team was just like, yes, Corey, I'm so proud of that thing that you did there. And I was just sitting there feeling emotional. I was just like, oh, well, thank you guys. There's so much approval. Like, that's the approval that I'm usually seeking. I'm usually always seeking this. And instead of telling you guys to approve me, I was just being me, and now I got it. Wow, how amazing, right?
Who would have thought?
So I think, just to like answer your question, is it's with the whole like the story of my example of it is, it has been a journey of just capturing authentic moments. Because when I filmed a couple of pieces of content, like before I got in, I just like shook things out. I just turned my camera around, just like in my car. And one thing was like rain was going, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to talk about what's really happening right now, but relate it to my audience. I just thought to myself, what would they want to hear? From me, what would they want to hear? And I was like, oh, they probably just want to hear my experience and what I'm learning and going through, because it's really helpful. So, and I remember when I went to make content, sometimes I go to make content and like, my heart gets a little bit racy, I get a little bit anxious, and then I go like, all right, bang, let's get in, and then I turn it on. So instead of turning it on, I kind of like, it felt like I had this opening, and I was just like, guys, I was just letting my voice do what it wanted to do. And yeah, so when that happened and we got awesome feedback on that, I was like, that's it.
Yep, I love that.
Yeah.
I think that core piece as well is, that turning it on bit. It's like, you have the capacity to, if you're like facilitating rooms or you're doing content and stuff, it's just like, all right, now we're on. It's like, all right, now we're in an entirely different like archetype, different energy. It's just like, you guys are going to listen to me right now. It's just like... I had someone
when it's needed. Yeah.
I had someone message me the other day. They're like, "You talk quietly, like in some of your content." I'm like, "I don't understand why you do that." And I'm just like, "Well, sometimes you don't need to be like yelling at people all the time." It's like, well, if you need to yell at people like to get them to like opt into something, then you're probably going to need to yell at them to get results as well. So you're going to lose your voice.
It's so true. And what I found on that is like, I also have a very aggressive nature.
Yeah.
So like my whole personality, it's just, even when we're having fun, it's aggressive. Like, let's do this and let's do that. Blah, blah. So like, for me, it's been like a journey of like, how can I just not be as aggressive? Because it's tiring me the fuck out. Yeah. Like it really is, just all the time, just boom, boom, having to be on all the time. It's like, no, let's just try to open it, and then every now and then, using the content as an example, I send some stuff to my editor, and he's like, I hate this. It just looks like you're lazy and you're tired. And I'm like, damn it, I'm trying to be open like as best as I can. But yeah, I think it's cool. Then knowing that you have that skill to turn it on in your back pocket has been huge for me. Because I remember our first retreat that we ran, I was dust afterwards for like a week. I was like this. I think every piece of dopamine and serotonin in my brain, I used it in a day. I was just absolutely trash.
Yeah.
Then our last one, we were pretty much fine. It was like a day, and then we were good like the day after. And it was the same thing even when I started facilitating group calls. I remember sitting on group calls, freaking out. Like, oh, I hope someone doesn't share something really hectic that like offends and freaks out everyone else. And I'm just sitting there anxious as hell, just like, holy shit. And then someone would share something too much, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have a one-on-one chat to them later to help them go through the thing, not on the call. Yeah. And it's very interesting when you were talking about beforehand around like the co-regulation of the nervous systems, because like it's completely different when someone shares something now and it's like it's something they got to talk about shame, or there's this anger that they come out. We're just encouraging it. We're like, more, tell us more. Then everyone on the call was just like, what is going on? And then everyone's like, oh, that person's just like me, blah, 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 blah. And like, we have some pretty cool transformations. So it's interesting noticing that even just sitting on a Zoom call, talking with people, it's like your nervous system's fired up, and you can choose to be a leader or you can choose like not to, which has just been like crazy for me to learn in the last couple of years. Yeah. And I feel a lot more relaxed because of it. I'm like, oh, which is nice.
Yeah. And that's definitely one of the things that we see play out with so many leaders. They're playing into what we like to call like a functional freeze. It's like you're stuck in like the hustle mentality, but you're still in a free state because you're just doing that thing. You're so focused, but you see no other options, that like all of these other options available, but you're so focused that you're actually like doing things, creating results, but your nervous system just gets cooked, and then your energy is completely fucked because you're just so focused that you miss all the opportunities. And with leaders, it's like that ability to be able to, zoom out, get our nervous system back into a place where we can actually start to receive all the options that are available to us. What's been your journey with that, to be able to step back from it all?
Again, it's the whole letting go thing. Like I will just keep drumming of like how important like the letting go process is. So essentially for me, one thing that actually landed at Extreme Leadership with Preston and Alexi on the last day was we were doing like this dancing thing. And like Preston and Alexa on stage, and I was noticing I wanted Preston to just be like, yeah, or something like that towards me on stage. That's what I was noticing. Yeah. I was like, why do I want this like masculine figure to recognize me? And then it just hit, and I was like, oh shit, little Corey who never got approval from dad, that's what he's searching for, and that's what he's yearning for. He has to give it to himself. And then the rest of the day, I was just like, no, I've set up everything in my life to try to get approval. I looked at my content and I was like, oh my God, that's all for approval. I was thinking about all these conversations that I had with my partner, and I was like, oh my God, this is all for approval. Even with the team and how we'd like run through meetings, I was like, oh my goodness, this thing here is all for trying to get approval. So like my journey with it is like, one, just understanding that, like putting in, okay, need for approval. Two, I've been learning so much recently, because the embodiment piece is starting to land for me the last, like, I would say 6 months, was that. Two, looking at where I manipulate, right? Looking at where I manipulate things, to put myself in a position where someone has to confirm my beliefs that they're correct, right? So that happens all the time. So it just be like, even in a meeting or something, I'm like, oh, let's look at this person's content though, because I really think this thing's right, and that person's good, and this person's good, and this person's good, and that's how we should be creating content like that. And it's like, I've just justified and used like 100 different examples just to confirm my belief instead of listening to someone else's. Yeah. What? So that was one. Need for control. Yeah. So as we talked about beforehand, so my need for control is basically like, if my environment isn't in a situation that I need it to be in, it's like I start freaking out. So I'll start trying to manipulate, control, like move things around, say yes, say no to people, and with the disregard of all their preference, disregard of the group's preference, even though I think I'm doing something right for the group, in order to like let go. And for me, it used to be bedtime, right? So I'm a sleep princess, like, track all my sleep. I've been a biohacker for like the longest time. Yeah. So I'm like, bed at 8 p.m. I haven't got kids at the moment, so I want to like really just enjoy my sleep, right? So when friends are around or we've got something going on, as soon as it hits at 8 o'clock, everyone out, like, let's go. Yeah. And people might actually be having a really good time and enjoying their night. And I've made it all about me just so I can get to bed early, so that we can all wake up in the morning, because this is in my head, so then we can have a really nice morning coffee together, we can go for a walk together, but that's just not being present, right? So the need for control there. And then the fourth one is being able to identify my disassociation and understand when it happens. I didn't really get what disassociation meant. Like, I knew it, I understood it, I could see when other people disassociate, but I didn't understand when I disassociated. And my disassociation was just when, like, if we're having a conversation and then I just start thinking like, oh shit, I got to go get the groceries tomorrow. Oh shit, I got to, talk to this person later. Oh shit, I forgot to pay this bill. Oh shit, I got to go in and have this thing, and then start thinking about that and then come back. I'm like, that is just me disassociating. My disassociation is also humor, and my disassociation is also making the problem about someone else. So if we're having a conversation and it's like, oh, this thing's a little bit scary for me, especially if it's in an intimate relationship with someone, I'll go, oh no, but maybe we should talk about you, or maybe we should go around this thing. And I've just completely avoided what's happened with my mind. So those four things of control, manipulation, disassociation, I forgot the other one that I mentioned, just the letting go process.
Yeah.
All of those together has really been able to let my leadership flourish. And I've just seen just crazy results in my team. Like, everyone's so much on board. I've had like messages from all the guys in my community just being like just random ones that I don't usually get. Just like, Corey, whatever you're doing right now, we just love it. And I'm like, oh, this is the best.
Yeah.
So it's like proof in the pudding that it works. And I also read the book, I think it was called The Motive. And
is it good? I haven't read it.
Oh, I really like it. At the
I've got
start,
his other one as well. I read that one. I think that was like 5 dysfunctions of a team, but I haven't gotten into that one yet. So
I loved it. It was so good. I haven't read the 5 dysfunction of the team, so let's do a swapsies. Right? I just listened to it, but I at the start, he just tells a story of just like, it has like a good leader and a bad leader, and they're just having a conversation together.
Yeah.
Right? And one's talking like, oh, supposed things be this way by the goals, the metrics, and the KPIs. The other guy's like, I have conversations with people, and that's all I do, and I have so much time. And sometimes I don't. And then the other guy and him are just like sort of butting heads.
Yeah.
And then at the end, through the story that's told and the proof with everything that they went through, is like, okay, a leader's job is basically just having conversations with people. And I was like, oh, so with all of this stuff that's happening with me, it's preventing me from just having conversations with people that are present, maybe slightly uncomfortable, or I have to look at something in myself, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So being able to understand it and shift myself to go, okay, let's just organize some more conversations and let's like talk more and see how people are going. Just immediately everything just started going up.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what really worked for me is like that. And I also think it's always prioritizing my health.
Yeah.
Like every time that my health slips a little bit and I turn my health back on, that helps too.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I love that. There's a lot of pieces in that for people as well, because it highlights, most people don't have that recognition or that level of self-awareness to be able to start to see, holy fuck, I live my entire life through approval. and it's one of those cool things that plays out for people, especially for, coaches and speakers. Coaches and speakers have the same underlying wounds in many instances. They have that misunderstanding wound that plays out for coaches, because coaches then seek to understand everything they need to understand, psychology and all of these people. So that plays out. And then the approval or seen or recognition, whatever the flavor of that is for speakers as well, starts to play out, because I literally had the exact same moment the first time that I did Extreme. I was just like looking where Preston's looking and like kind of like just gotta see me over here, just approve of me. Yeah. And then he comes up to me at the end and he goes, "Man, you're one of the good guys. Like, I see you doing your thing. One of the good guys." And I'm just like, "Oh my God, this is so amazing." And afterwards, I'm just like, "Oh my God, this is my life."
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Why is it everywhere?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was like, "Dad, can you just see me, please?" Literally, it was like, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you on that one, man.
Yeah, so the more that we can actually start to create that deeper sense of connection to ourselves, to be able to recognize all these patterns, it allows us to be able to step into leadership on an even deeper level. And we can start to then create from that place and recognize, what's the next level of our wounding that we can start to step into? Because especially with our wounds, they're not something that necessarily go away. They're something that we deepen our journey with. The more that we can actually start to create that connection with our need for approval, and it just starts to show up, because then it becomes, approval from clients, then approval from the team, and then approval from peers, all of these things. So the more that we can deepen that relationship with ourselves, especially through the lens of our wounds, the more that opens up for us. So I'd love to know what are some of the other common themes that you've journeyed in your leadership journey and the wounds that you've noticed.
Let's get into that question. But first thing, I just want to know this as well. Does it also feel for you? 'Cause I need to know the answer to this question. Does it also feel really intense for you to like overcome that? Like
Yeah.
for the emotions, for me, sometimes those emotions are so strong and scary. And I'm like, I do not want to say this. I do not want to talk. I don't want to have to call this person. I don't want to. I'm so fearful of either the rejection or the having to face that, oh, this is just a need for approval. And if you're rejecting me, then I'm just not getting the approval that I think that I should have. Do you have that as well?
Yeah, it's going to be. So for me, it's like I recognize that the approval that I need has created like my entire model of the world. So it's almost like it's in conflict with that. If I fear that someone is going to reject me or not give me that approval, then it's like, oh, like I'm not good, I'm unlovable, all of the pieces that come up around that. So it's like, I'm going to do everything that I can to fucking keep that at arm's length to be able to keep it out here rather than experience that feeling in my body because I'm actually stepping into that. So it's like, for me, it's this ongoing dance of like recognizing that and, you know, normally when that happens, you know what you need to do. It's just how do you get your human on board with it? Because you know the conversation that you need to have, you know what you need to do. It's like the human part is just like way back here. And it's like, get the human part into it as well, because, you know, that's going to make that conversation much easier. Because if the human stays out of it, then you're probably going to go back into dominating them to get the result rather than bringing the human into it, which actually creates, you know, transformation on both sides of it. So
Oh, so true. Because I notice myself make the excuse up of time.
yeah,
I'm like, oh, I haven't got enough time. Or I have so much other stuff to do. Or I've
Yeah.
got to be doing this and I've got to be doing that. And it's all just avoiding.
Yep.
And at the moment, I'm just feeling it's like awakening all these areas of just like, man, I'm feeling it more.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I have to do these because if I don't, like it's gonna hurt soon. And yeah, I can delay it a day or 2 or 3 or 4, maybe like maximum a week, but I can't. I'm gonna have to like lean in, and it feels like, oh, it's just so scary. But
Yeah.
to answer your question on the journey, it's for me, it's been a lot of self-awareness around things in my personal life. So what I noticed when I look back 10 years was just like, all right, I was addicted to porn. I was addicted to validation from women. I went out and partied when I didn't want to go out and partied. And I'd be the loud blah, 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 to try to get as much attention and approval as possible. I got really jacked in the gym. I had a lot of other intentions for like bodybuilding and getting jacked, but that was definitely a part of it at the start.
Yep.
Until I blew up after a comp, and it really wasn't that bad, but for me it felt like I blew up, and I was like, oh, this is just going to happen pretty much every time. I got to get over this. So at the start though, it was very much for that. I wasn't getting much sleep. I was watching a lot of TV shows. I was just like nonstop, just binging TV shows, just stress thinking, oh, what am I going to do, you know, with my life? And then even, you know, starting a job and moving my career and starting to really be myself, there was still so many moments of little bits of distraction or self-sabotage when I'd say yes to a party, or I'd say yes to this event that I was going to have to go to, or yes to this coaching thing. I felt this need where I'm like, oh, I have to get coaching here, I have to get a business coach here, I have to do this here, when, you know, really I should have just done it myself. You know, for multiple times there where things happen, and it was all just this like distraction of getting away from just really leading and taking on more responsibility in areas that actually make my business grow, and they make me grow, and they make people all around me grow. And there was a huge reflection of all of that in my relationship.
Yep.
Because at the start, I positioned myself as this guy who, you know, had it all together. If you're with someone who has it all together for a year or two, it's tiring to be around, right?
Yep.
Because they don't have it all together, right? But I have this perception that they do. And then you're like, am I, like in her perspective, she was like, well, fucking something's wrong with me because I don't have it together all the time, because he's always positioning himself in that position.
Yeah.
And then there'd be arguments and bickering and just, you know, nonstop, like back and forth like that. And I was like, oh, everything that's happening with my own leadership journey is just reflecting in my relationship. So it started as a journey from like all of the distractions, blah, 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 to then, preventing me from genuine connection and intimacy in my relationship, which is something that I really prioritize and really wanted. So I was like, interesting when that come up. So for me, I've learned my most amount of leadership in my relationship, which has been pretty cool. And then I've had those tools and brought them back to my team.
Yeah.
And then back to content, and it worked. So
yeah, we see that a lot. The biggest thing is, you have a season in your life which is like an initiation season. So you're either going to be initiated in business or your relationship or with your family, and you have a season of initiation where it just kind of all falls apart, but then there's also a season of mastery in that, a new level of mastery that you've been initiated into, that you actually start to create shifts. And when people start doing their internal work, a lot of the initiation occurs with like their family. It's like all the inner child healing that starts with that, and then it starts to show up in either business or their relationship. And when we actually start to dive deeper into all of those areas, then we can actually start to level up in every area, because we've all heard the statement, the way that you do one thing is the way that you do everything, and everything touches everything. So the more that we can initiate ourselves into that, the more that starts to open up for us, because you recognize the same thing that you play out of, that masculine wound that the masculine has is like, the time thing. It's like, oh, is it worth the time that it's going to take to actually go all the way through this, or do I just kind of car park it and then come back to it later? That's what the masculine does all of the time, and it's hilarious because it plays out so much in my relationship as well. It's just like, oh, it's like, no, I've got a couple of appointments now. We're not going to go through this. This is going to be I say to Jack, tonight's going to be a late night, because it's like, all right, well, now we're going to go fully into the thing and fucking go all the way till it's done, which is, sometimes 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and she's just like, I just want to go to sleep. I'm so tired. And I'm like, well, you're tired because there's fucking shit between us right now. That's why you're tired. It's not the lack of sleep that you're getting. You're not sleeping well because we're fighting. So
we'll get through it. We're going to get...
So I'm just bringing that same energy of like, we're going to keep going till we're done. We're fighting until this is over. Yeah. And she's just like, oh, what am I doing?
But don't give up. Keep going. You're not allowed to give up in it. Oh, that's so funny. I relate to that.
Yeah. So the piece of like that leadership is like, there's going to be seasons for you where you're initiated into something, and then seasons where you take that initiation into the other areas of your life. And what I find for most people is they fight so much the area that they're being initiated into, especially when it's like, I don't want to be initiated in my relationship. I want to be initiated into business. I want to make more money. And it's like, well, that's kind of not the season that you're in. If you actually go through the initiation in your relationship, your business is going to get better, because that's the weakest link at the moment. So what have you noticed in terms of your journey with that, in terms of the initiations?
Oh man, it's crazy. So I remember my first initiations was all around money, like my first real big ones. Because when I first started business, like my first week or two, I made like 30 grand. And I was like, what the shit? This was going from like a government job to nothing. I put $5,000 in ads, and that's all I had in my bank account. And I was like, well, in 4 weeks, I'm fucked if I don't make anything. So, but what that did was that forced me to get into my DMs and like actually start messaging people, put on a hustle, like it's switch on, right?
Yeah.
And it worked for a period of time. And very quickly I started hitting like 60K months, like 50, 60K months, just nonstop. So I was like, this is excellent. And then very slowly I just started going, like it'd be like, oh, 49, 45, 45, 46, 44, 39, 36, 39, 30, 29, 32, 27. Like it was literally like that, right? And I was like, what is going on? Like every month just very slowly like going down. And I noticed the control in me just was like fully freaking out. But at the same time, I didn't have clarity on exactly where we were changing, where we were morphing things around, the business, like the offer itself, what we were 100% facilitating, the genuine vision of the program and the products that we're doing, and how exactly we were going to do it. Like there was no elite, like really high level certainty. And it took that to happen where everything just slowly went down. 2 years later, it's like, oh, we've found the thing now. Now it's time to build back up. And now we're going like from the front. So I remember with like the journey of that, like with finance it was just really crazy to look at, because it was so many triggers, right? Like, oh my God, do I have to go on a tax payment plan? Or is this thing going to have to happen? Or is this whatever it is? And then when like things like that happen, you're like, oh, I can just go on a payment plan. I'm literally going to pay this off in like 2 months and be back to normal, which is fine. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, that really wasn't that bad. You know what I mean? And everyone else has had to do one at some stage in their life, and all these other people. And you're like, oh, cool. So as an entrepreneur, like I'm supposed to go through this.
Yeah.
But what it's teaching me the whole time is go and get clarity first. And what I've noticed was like recently, it was so interesting because one of my friends, he's really in touch, and he said to me and my ex-partner, he was like, for some reason, there's something going on with you two where like you're not allowing each other's business to flourish. Like there's something going on there. And then we had like a breakup. It was like a few months ago we had this breakup, and then we both our businesses went vroom for like 6 weeks. And then we got back together, and it was still up for a month, and then it started slowly going back down.
Yeah.
We're like, what is this settling thing that's happening here? And for me, I found out what it was. My need to be alone.
Yep.
And how scary that was for me. Because I was like, I remember I used to have some triggers around her if she traveled interstate or overseas because I'd been cheated on when that happened when I was younger. So I remember like, working through those. But then when I had to go somewhere, I was like, fuck that. Because the same thing happened. I went to go travel or go away for a night or whatever it was, and I got cheated on when I was younger. So every time I went, I was like, oh, if I just stayed, I'm around this person all the time, then like they're not going to cheat on me. So I had this nervous system response, even with her, wherever it was, that like abandonment so high that anytime I went to do anything like really on my own, I was like, no. Even though I'd traveled the world on my own, I've done like business on my own, moved states on my own, like done all these things on my own. When it come to a relationship, I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, all right, there's an opportunity here. The whole world right now is just telling me to be by myself and just sort of like get really comfortable with that and make sure you dedicate that practice. Because for me, when I would remember, I'd be like, oh, why is things fucked? Or this feeling weird or this? Oh shit, I got to go be by myself. And then I'd quickly go. But it was another tick box. It wasn't like a consistent of, I'm just going to respect my own space and my own time and my own spirit and just make sure that, you know, every couple of weeks, every month, whatever, just go be by yourself, even if it's for a weekend or a few days or a week.
Yeah.
And that for me has probably been the biggest thing for me to learn recently on what you were saying, which I think everyone actually needs, but I think everyone is also, a lot of people in my world are scared to do that.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, book an Airbnb for a weekend away. What the hell? And I was like, it took like my first breakup for it to happen. I was like, oh, cool. I'm booking an Airbnb and going away, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, look at all these ideas and everything. So I just think that, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There's been so many times where, so obviously with my partner, we do like personal development and stuff together, do business together. So there's not a lot of separation. And there's been times where it's just like, all right, well, you know, I'm booking an Airbnb. I'm fucking out of here. I'm not going to talk to you for a while. And then also other events and stuff. I remember this retreat we went to in Bali. I'm like, darling, I love you. And I'm not going to talk to you at all for this entire retreat, even though we're at the same retreat. I'm not going to speak to you once. I'm not going to look at you. This is for me. And got to like, you know, 5 days into the retreat, and I'm like, okay, now I can talk to you. It's just like, oh, hi, stranger.
I love you now. Yeah. Hey, it's new me. What's up? I find that so healthy though, right?
Yeah.
Like it's so healthy.
Yeah.
And I feel like that really reflected back to me on my own leadership, because in the micro, because for me, I don't really like the saying, how you do one thing is how you do everything. I like this one a little bit better. I like how you react to one thing is how you react to everything. That's what I like a little bit better, because I'm like, it's definitely like in terms of reaction. So I'm like, I'm reacting like this in my relationship. How am I reacting like this in when I'm leading with my team? And I would just like, my editor have to sort from sometimes. It's like, let's just look at all this content together. We just be looking at this content. And he's like, this isn't going anywhere, bro. But that's me needing to be like, you know, have him confirm and be like with me whilst I'm like learning something new and when we're doing something. And I'm like, man, that's like some weird micromanagey shit. So we just like cut that. We're like, oh, what the hell? Bang, let's stop this and just set up a different meeting and do it then. But it was really just interesting to know that I was like, oh, I do it then and I do it in other areas. Yeah. And then on the caveat to that, I feel like sometimes the pendulum swings and then it's the complete opposite. You know what I mean? And it's not like healthy, balanced in the middle. So it's just, I'm just so let go and unattached.
Yeah.
Oh, you do whatever you want, whatever it is, blah, 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 blah. And then like you sort of lose the direction of where you're going. So as well as what we were just saying, finding that healthy balance in the middle, I found has been like really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I noticed when I was looking back at one of my relationships before Jack, it was just like, there was definitely that level of codependence because we'd just always be together. We worked in the same gym. We did all of these things. We lived together and all these things. And it was just traumatizing. That's the only word I can use. I'm like, politically correct. Well, it's truth.
Yeah. Well, you do. I feel like you lose yourself in someone,
Yeah.
right? And you become enmeshed. I was listening to one of Robert Glover's books, and he was like, they call it fusion. And what happens is with fusion you lose your sense of autonomy.
Yeah.
You lose your sense of identity. And then every time you're around that person, because they're reflecting everything around you so much, you're like, fuck that. I just want to be me. I don't want to have to be learning all these things all the time, and it's like slowly sort of becoming one.
Yeah.
Which for me was like really important to learn and understand. And I was like, okay, this is really cool, because for me, just focusing on myself is just so important. Like it really is. And that is it just comes back to, it's like, okay, what is focusing on yourself? And that's making sure that my diet's on point, making sure that my training's on point, making sure that like I have really good sleep, but not controlling everyone when they go to bed, right? And that's making sure that I'm doing my journaling, doing my meditation, and taking time for myself to make sure that I'm on path with my plans, my financial plans, my business plans, my goals and my mission. And I'm consistently reworking on my purpose, just consistently like going over that without like sabotaging myself with falling under binge eating, overworking, stressing, scrolling on my phone. Do you know how many people that I speak to? It's like, talk about leadership diminisher. For the last 3 months, everyone that I've spoke to, or I've inducted into my community, or just had a conversation where I was giving some advice or something too, and they were asking, has all just been around, what do I do? Because I'm just scrolling like 8 hours a day on my phone, more, and I've got a full-time job.
Yep.
And I was like, whoa, I work on my phone, and that's not even as much. So that was pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah. We're running an event over the weekend, and it was like, right, what are the things you're going to change after the event in your life? And people are like starting to share on it, and I'm hearing the thing about like what everyone's going to stop, and it's like, I'm going to stop scrolling, and I'm like, well, let's reframe the question. Let's look, if you don't stop scrolling, like what's possible if we just become more efficient with the things that you're already doing? Because in most instances, people don't recognize what they're actually getting from scrolling. It's like they're getting the disassociation mechanism. They're getting the capacity to be able to, avoid something. But if you're not going to be able to avoid that, then how do we actually start to create a different environment to be able to go beyond that? Because it's easy to be able to, want to stop scrolling, but part of the limitation with that is what most people are doing is they're just shaming themselves for scrolling. They recognize that they're scrolling, which is actually keeping them scrolling. They're like, oh fuck, I'm scrolling. And they're like, get out of Instagram or whatever they're on. And then like, they're like, oh fuck, I was doing it again. And before they even recognize it, they're back in. Why? Because they're avoiding the feelings, and they've got this shame loop playing out, which is just perpetuating this entire cycle. And part of it is recognizing, what's actually creating that? What is the thing that they're truly avoiding? What is the feeling they're truly avoiding? What are they closing off, both physically, emotionally, and mentally, that is actually occurring there? Because when we can get back to that place, that's where the behavior will shift, rather than just going, I need to stop doing the behavior of scrolling. So
what do you think it is normally? Like, what do you think, like, in terms of the people that you've worked with, like the thing that the most emotion that people are afraid of feeling that keeps them scrolling? Like, what do you think the people that you've worked with?
Yeah, what it comes back to is like their wounds. So
Okay.
it's like their wounds are coming up around all of it. So they're avoiding feeling, as an example. People avoid feeling all day, every day, feeling either powerless or unworthy. It's like, I don't want to feel powerless. Powerless is the feeling that we have when we're in freeze. So we're actually doing that, but we're actually disassociating. We're not actually feeling that feeling of feeling powerless. We're just doing a behavior that is avoiding us actually being in it. We're in our head. There's a big difference between what's playing out, in our body versus in our head. If we're thinking, then often that means we're not actually in our feeling body, and that creates this disassociation. Then we create all these labels, and it's like, oh, I'm scrolling. I'm intellectualizing it, compartmentalizing it in my mind to be able to get further away from my body. But then it becomes this perpetuating experience where we're logicking it. Oh, I just need to stop scrolling, or I need to scroll less. Okay, cool. Well, that just means you're really in a freeze response right there. Let's look at the freeze response. Let's look at the things you're avoiding feeling most of the time: worthiness, unworthiness, powerlessness. They're the two primary things that is having people start that behavior and then keep looping in it.
So they're the most, from what you see, is the most common emotions people avoiding is powerlessness and unworthiness. So that's why.
Yeah, there's different flavors of it. Powerlessness is just the experience of the freeze. That's the feeling of it. Because when you're in freeze, you feel powerless. I can't change this is the thing.
Yeah.
So that's the feeling that's occurring in that, but they don't label it as that. They just say that I'm numbing, I'm doing all of these things. So that's in and of itself a disassociation mechanism. But as soon as we take a step back, the thing that they're avoiding is it's either unlovable or unworthy. It's like they're the two of the primary things that we're going to avoid feeling, that we're going to create every single coping mechanism to avoid the feeling of that. And yet, ironically, when we actually feel that, it no longer pops up in shadows or beach ball. We push the beach ball over here and it pops up somewhere else. Yeah. If we can just like be with that for a little period of time, then it no longer starts to control us as much.
Interesting. And all the people that you've worked with in terms of like the most common of unlovable or anything else, like in the language that they would perceive, people come to you like, oh, like Cody, I'm feeling this and it's making me scroll. What do you think the most common one is? Like
the language that they use?
Yeah. Like what's the emotion that they would...
They don't even talk about emotions. They just talk about behaviors. So there's 3 different levels of it. There's feelings, there's behaviors, and then there's thoughts.
So just saying I'm just scrolling around and I don't know why. Because that's what I was thinking. Because I was like, what's the emotion that people were most having this? And for me, I'm like, I swear the people that I talk to don't know. They're just like, I'm just sick of not doing what I need to be doing.
Yep. And that's the thing. It's you look at either the behavior or the thought. They're completely oblivious to the feeling. So you go, okay, what are the thoughts that you have? Have you had that experience of just thinking, oh, what am I doing scrolling again? If you've had that thought, the reason for that is because you're in freeze. That's an entirely different mechanism to saying, oh, you're avoiding the feeling of unworthiness, because people are going to be like, no, I don't. I'm not avoiding feeling that. So you speak to the thoughts and you speak to the behaviors rather than the feelings in that. Yes, the feelings are a core component of it, but people are completely oblivious of that. They're not aware of that. You'd have to be quite self-aware to, like what you were talking about before, it takes so much level of a self-awareness to be able to recognize, holy fuck, that approval thing is playing out everywhere. That's like self-aware people. Most people are just like, oh, I'm seeing a behavior and I'm seeing a thought of like, fuck, I'm scrolling again. I want it to stop, but I'm scrolling again.
Yeah, that's one thing that makes me really on purpose, because I wish everyone could sort of have the awareness that I've been able to build for a long time. It's one thing I'm really proud of really, I'm aware of my awareness when I'm talking. I'm like, oh, this is a new thing that you're like, when I'm learning something new about myself, I'll even be thinking, oh, this is a new level of awareness now that you're going to be going through and you want to be learning. So make sure you treat yourself kindly and you think about this and you think about that and you ask for help and you ask for support and you try to have some conversations around this so that you can really allow it to dissolve, because your ego is coming in for a bit of a whack. It's gonna get served in the next however long. And it's I wish everyone could get to that position, because I was talking to my dad about it, because he's just like, it's crazy, right? He's almost 60 and he's reading a book on boundaries at the moment. I asked him, like, Dad, do you know what boundaries? And he's like, oh. Had no idea. So I'm so proud of him. Like, I'm so proud. Like, Dad's doing the work, and he's like, oh, I think I'm ready to get a coach. And I'm like, Dad, please get a coach. And I'm like, please be the best thing ever. Because for me, the sense of freedom that I've been able to have with working on something that you love and you're so passionate about, it's just been, I found so much meaning in it. And I'm like, oh man, I wish everyone could have this, because it's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing that it's interesting kind of how it plays out, because so many people want their family to be able to get into the work. And we talk about this in terms of developmental stages. Like, one of the things that plays out in the cycles that we go through is between 3 and 5 years old, we have this kind of period where it's called magical thinking, where you recognize your parents are fighting and you're the common denominator because you see it all the time. So you're like, oh, it's me. That means that if I fix this situation, it's going to be all good. So you spend the next 20-something years of your life till you start to get to 28 trying to save your parents on this unconscious level. Once you get to 28 to 35, you start to realize, holy fuck, that's not actually going to work. But unconsciously, until that point, you start to do it all the time. And we come from this place with our parents of like, I'm going to save them. And the biggest red flag with this is like, so many people, they're like, I'm going to retire my parents. And I'm like, all right, cool. Still trying to save your parents. Wow. Okay, cool. Because although it is, noble to be able to then, retire your parents, but what that then creates is it creates this mechanism where they actually don't actually fully own their strengths to actually like become autonomous themselves. You start to take their power away from them by giving them things rather than allowing them to own their own strength. And this piece of, wanting to save our parents is so ingrained in our nature that most people never recognize it. And as soon as you can kind of hold that tension of wanting your parents to evolve without needing them to, then it actually opens up so much for them. That's when they actually start to read books on boundaries and stuff like that. That's what's required.
It's crazy. And like, I love how you said that, because I'm like, yeah, if you still have that huge intention of wanting to save your parents and you're still attached to them, you actually haven't broken the bond and you're not even your own person because of that, which makes so much sense. And it's really cool because I've seen dad like multiple times in our relationship where he's had to like almost bite his tongue because he's wanted to like help or save me. And I've kind of just been like, don't do it. Don't do it. And notice him being like, and then like not do anything. And then I've noticed multiple times where I was saying in my earlier 20s when I was trying to save him. And I had like, I moved back in with him for a little while. And I was like, Dad, you're eating like me. But he had like cancer scares and shit. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck what you do. You're eating like me. You're doing what I'm doing, and you're starting fasting, whatever it was. And he had these cancer scares and we completely got rid of him. 3 months, not a cell of cancer in his body. Yeah. No chemo, no nothing. And I was like, nice, right? So it was really cool. But then after just like, Dad just come and saw me multiple times for what we were doing, and he'd just sit in and listen to some of our coaching calls and blah, 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 blah. And then I'd talk to his partner about something and she'd ask my advice on something, and I maybe coach her through something at the time. Like I was coaching her through disassociation and how she has no boundaries, and then he's listening, and then next minute he's like, you got any books on this? So I'll listen to them. And then he starts listening to them, and then next minute, it's crazy. Like he's done the work. And I feel what was really challenging for me was actually having to receive my dad in terms, I think that's a good leadership quality as well, because there's so many times like, no, I want to be my own man and I want to do this thing. And it would even trigger some of my friends sometimes around dad, just like being around me and he's like, oh, can I pay for this thing? And being like, of course you can. Like, because he wants to, as a dad, be like, oh, I feel like I'm providing, and that makes him feel really special. And it got to the point where I remember once we were at the markets, and one of my best friends was there because my dad does like a lot of like cash jobs. Yeah. And he just goes to my friend, goes to give him $100, and he's like, hey, want to buy some groceries? Like my friend makes money. So he's like, Kev, I don't need your money, dude. I don't need your money. He was like, okay. But noticing that in that moment, he just really wanted to be received. So having to like go around like the way of being like, okay, I don't need my dad's money and I don't need him for this and I don't need him to provide this. But when he offers and knowing that he wants to give me a gift, like, yeah, I can receive. Like I say, yes, thank you so much. Like, I really appreciate that. And then, you know, at some point along the way, I'll get the next thing or whatever it is. Yeah. And for me, there's been, I don't know if you've experienced this, but for me, this is coming up a lot, like in regards to this, with my leadership journey. But I'm just in this position where I have a lot of people thanking me. And I'm just like, okay, receive. And it's a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. I'm like, oh, this is a lot of thanks. People are thanking me a lot right now, and I have to receive this whole thing. And it's just at a point where I'm sitting there and I've got like 3 people thanking me. Just be like, thank you so much. And I'm like, I'm receiving this so much, but also I'm so uncomfortable because this is like a lot of praise. And then it'll happen the day after and the day after. And I'm like, how much like gratitude am I going to like receive here? I know what I mean. It's such a beautiful thing, but it does make me like uncomfortable sometimes to feel it, especially on like the amount of praise that I have had through some people and some experiences has been so overwhelming, like so overwhelming to the point if I think about it, I could just like have tears, and to the point where sometimes we're like, hey, everyone, we need to talk about other people right now, not just me. Like, thank you guys for celebrating me so much, but we're here not for me. This is actually for another thing. And it's been challenging and beautiful at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. What's it called?
Oh, there's a legit term for this? Yeah. Oh, so cool. This is cool because this is baffling me. Come on, Cody, you got it.
It'll come to me. Basically, what happens is it's foreboding joy. Foreboding joy is the term for it.
So what a great thing. Because I was thinking, I'm like, is something wrong with me? Like, why can't I receive this? I'm like, is this too much? So yeah, foreboding, just the word foreboding and joy has already starting to land.
This has been playing out for me a little bit too. So what happens is when you get to your capacity of receivership, then it becomes too much and we stop feeling it, that we then forebode joy. And like, this is like the most common way that this plays out for me has been playing out for me recently, which is just like, if you experience all this amazingness in your life, you'll get to the point where you just start to move away from it. And the primary way that this is I'll be like driving down the highway and then I'll like have a fantasy of like crashing the car or something. It's just like my life is so good that I'll just hit into this top bit and then I bounce off it and go, okay, cool, no, I can't experience any more. So I'm going to instantaneously recorrect myself by having this fantasy of like, oh, this truck comes in and takes me out. And I'm like, oh. And that's the most common experience that people have with it. It's this fantasy of something bad happening to them that they bump up against that brings them back. So what it comes back to is that feeling. It's like, where do we come back to that level of feeling of recognizing that, yes, we've done a lot of the work on all of the things that has created like the life that we want, but then we're bumping up against the top bit, which is guilt. When our lower level of this, the floor that we talk about is resentment. When we're hitting on the bottom, we project to other people, they're fucked up. If you don't have money, what happens? You say the people who have money, they're fucked up. So it's hate at the bottom, but then it's guilt at the top. When we start to have it better than other people, then we start to guilt ourselves, and then that's what happens. We have this thought of like, oh, something bad is going to happen.
Oh, it's so true. I was literally, as you're saying that, I was thinking of like a column, like a column that you'd have an Excel sheet or something like that, and there was like a red line of being like max joy, and then it's like all red up to the joy bit, and then for the top 30% is all just like green, and that's guilt, like a dark green.
Yep.
And it's sort of like, oh, I get to that max level of joy, and then the foreboding joy is just guilt, suppressing the joy that I want to feel, that I'm not allowing myself to come out. And as you were saying that, it was really cool because I was just thinking about like where I'm going and what I'm doing at the moment. And I was like, I've got so much joy to feel. Like, it's so funny because when people have like suppressed anger or, rage or shame, they got all this repressed stuff. As you were talking, I was like, I've got repressed joy. I was like, I've got a lot of repressed joy. Not an anger, not like a sad thing or something I have to work through. Well, I do have to work through it. Actually allowing myself to feel a lot of joy, which kind of put a pep in my step, to be honest. I'm like, wow, this is hectic. This is hectic like that. I feel like I've had the column is really low, and it's just been a lot of guilt. And my joy threshold has been really low because I've been hard on myself to try to win and succeed. And I feel like my whole life has kind of been like sabotaged because you're not feeling joy. Holy shit, Cody. Shake my hand.
Yeah. And that's the more work that we do, the more that we start to look for all the resentment, all the guilt, all the anger, all the lower level of emotions, which has its place here to work through. But eventually what happens is we're going to start hitting those upper limits, and that becomes the glass ceiling in our business.
Yeah, that's where I've been. It's so crazy you said that because I was like, that's just where I've been for like a year because I'm like, I've done so much of that. And I remember my last retreat because turning anger on is pretty easy for me because I've got I've had a lot of repressed anger. I love anger because for me, I believe anger is just passion suppressed. So it's a double-sided coin. One side's passion, one side's anger. So as soon as that anger comes out, I have so much passion for everything, and it's incredible. And I'm just like, come on, like bring it on when I'm feeling, instead of like, fuck you, it's like, come on. That's like the energy of how it shifts. Yeah. And we worked through a lot of anger at our retreats, but our last one, because we're having so much fun and it was flowing and we like let go and the leadership was just like fantastic. And all the times, everything worked so perfectly and we were changing times and shit around. We changed heaps of shit around. And it's just seamless. And we're like, oh, this is incredible. And everyone was like, the best experience is retreat. And got to the anger exercise and I was like, I can't be fucked. I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not getting on there. If someone else has to go first, I can't. I got to summon anger to like rile people up to get ready to release it. And I was like, no, I'm not doing the first stuff. I'll be completely exhausted. Yeah. And I was wondering why. Thank you, because being able to make that connection now. And it's like, well, the why there's a lot of repressed joy. Oh my God.
Yep. And that's one of the most common things that plays out for people once they've been in the work for a while. It's like they keep looking at, we call it like cleaning up work. It's like we're going to all this cleaning up and cleaning all this shit out, all the shit that's there. But until we can actually mature our nervous system to actually have it age up, that means that we can actually receive more joy. We can receive more of those things. Then, we just still stay stuck. And then normally what happens is people get addicted to like the cleaning up work. It's like, I need to go into a bigger somatic process. More anger, more. That didn't get me enough. So now I'm going to do it naked. Now I'm going to do it like it intensely. Now I'm going to use I'm going to hit a car with a baseball bat because I was using a cricket bat before on something else. The boxing bag's not enough anymore. Now I'm going to go even more intense. And it's like, well, maybe. But chances are it's probably a different kind of work that's going to get you to the next level.
It's just the same pattern repeating itself though. It's just like the same pattern that you were using for business of like, I need to be hard on myself or life or whatever it is to get this thing done. It's like, oh, I've had this release. This is fantastic. I don't deserve this release. I don't deserve the joy that I get after this relief. I don't deserve the relief that I get after this release. So I got to do it again and harder and faster. I remember I had like my one anger release. My thing for me was I was like, when I first did it, I was like, I need to help people with this.
Yep.
I think I was like, I've been so comfortable in this thing, and anger felt like a home to me. It felt like a returning home moment, like as you're talking about, like just release of anger. I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. This after experience. So that's what I like really look forward to in all of it. But that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think that's the perfect thing to kind of start to wrap up on. If you were to give people one final sentence or paragraph that every single person in the world heard, what would be your words for the world that every single person would hear?
I've got a couple of Nietzsche quotes, right? There's a couple. He who cannot command himself must obey.
Yeah.
One must have chaos to give birth to a rising star.
Yeah.
And those were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. Like they're the three quotes that I just absolutely love. The he who cannot command himself must obey is like, if you can't say what you're, like if you can't do what you say that you're going to do internally by listening to your intuition or your own head and noticing that, like, then you may as well be a follower, right? And with that is that you have to have the difficult conversation. You have to listen, you have to do the thing. And it's a practice to doing it. Noticing that, like, we can't be perfect with that, with commanding ourselves and just like elite level integrity that's just so there because our mind plays tricks on us. It's like, okay, but the practice to doing it and thinking like, oh, I fucked up there and whatever it is now I can move forward. I think it's incredible. One must have chaos to give birth to a rising star. I think it's absolutely beautiful to understand that we all have chaos and that if you let go of the chaos, we're talking about today, not control it, it's like that is just allows you to really grow into, you know, creating beyond who you are, right? And that's what we want to do, right? We really want to create beyond who we are. And we want to build something that is bigger and like beyond, you know, ourselves for what we can imagine. And I believe that's where we get most of our meaning and fulfillment. But to do that, it is understanding that there's chaos and, you know, moving with it. That's been huge for me to learn recently. And then the third one of those are thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music is, I think, a really important way of just listening that to understand that there's so many people out there and everyone has their own thoughts and own opinions. However, in group psychology and herd psychology, it's like most people in groups all have the same thought process and they haven't got their own, or they haven't got this unique thing. So most of the thoughts that people have are just conditions from the news, their phones, their parents, what they've watched, grown up, and people around them in society. So people who really do start to either do inner work or learn about themselves or go to the retreats and get to a place of self-awareness. Thank you for the compliment, understanding it, right? You get to this self-awareness where they can authentically create, you know, understand their own decisions and say what they want to say and be who they want to be. And also just kind of sit and chill and not have to approve all the time. It's like, wow, like you get to this level of freedom that everyone else sort of feels in you, but can't. They feel it in you, but they can't articulate it, right? They're just like, oh, why does like I kind of like this person with what they're doing, and why do I trust them so much, and blah 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 blah. And I feel like that's really important. So just like those three quotes, I really think would be awesome for people to listen to, and also I just want to give everyone a piece of advice. So please, like, listen, everyone listening to this, please take this on board. Read some of the old masculinity books, like the Iron Johns and like the Iron Johns and the Friedrich Nietzsche's and just some of like their old school books and the John Winelands and the Robert Bly books and all of those. I think they're so fantastic for just understanding what's happening in the psyche for men and women, because there's a part of us with masculinity that I feel when we really understand it and instead of shutting it down and repressing it, we can use the feminine, or we can just show up in a way that has so much less pressure. Because that's one thing that I notice with a lot of guys that I coach is they have so much pressure on them all the time. And the second that they can switch it regardless of their situation and just take action, things happen so much better. So I'll just leave it with a few of those.
Epic. Thank you so much.
All good.
What's the best way for people to be able to get in contact with you?
Hell yeah. So just Instagram is the best way. Corey Boutwell. So Corey with an E, and Boutwell is spelt exactly how it sounds. I have a podcast called the Corey Boutwell podcast as well, and CoreyBoutwell.com. So they're the three places that everyone can find me.
Epic. Thanks for the podcast. It was so epic.
Thank you so much.